Hello mate, and welcome back to Let's Code 4, this time it's personal. In this video we're going to carry on building from where we left off in the last video, and as you can see what I've got here is the game's already loaded, ready for testing. Before I get started, a huge thank you to everyone for subscribing and hitting that notification icon, that really helps me out. And of course, an even bigger thank you to my members and patrons, your names will run across the video at the end. Incidentally, if you are interested in supporting the channel, feel free to visit the Patreon in the description down below, or you can simply join the channel by hitting the join button next to the subscribe button. So let's jump in. So as you can see, I've got the game loaded, and if you remember from the last video, we have our avatar on the screen of one of our characters. I have only done one set of avatars for the affection range, but obviously if you remember back from when we created our avatar property, we need 4 for affection, 4 for love, and 4 for lust. But for the time being, this will suffice. As you can see, she's on the screen. There's not much going on in the background because we haven't sorted out our locations yet. And our menu is currently blank. So the first thing we can do is we can just check to see if clicking on her actually does what we want it to do. So if we click on her, lo and behold, you can see that buttons have appeared on the screen, which means we have that part in working. Now what we can do is we need to bring back up our code, so we can do that just there, and then we can look at our NPC 0 and we want to know what the affection is. So it's just lowercase affection and it's NPC 0. So we're going to go into Shift O, we're going to type in NPCs brackets 0 dot affection plus equals 1. And then we're going to see if that actually makes any difference. If we just click on their placeholder image, we can see that the buttons there are working. Now looking at our code, what we've actually done is we've created a range. So adding 1 to our affection isn't actually going to do anything. We actually need to set our affection to 25 or higher. I'm actually going to put a space in there because that's going to set my OCD off, and I'll do the same thing on that one and that one, and remember to save our code. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump back into our game, and we're just going to say equals 25, hit return, and then exit out. And there you go, you can see that Sally's avatar has changed. We can do that again, and we can set it to 50 just to see if that does the same thing. And lo and behold, you can see there that it has in fact changed the avatar again. And then if we wanted to test our last one, let's just do that one more time. And we're going to set it to 99. And there you go. So we've got different avatars appearing based on how affectionately they view us. And then once we're maxed out on affection, it will then start looking for our lust or our love, and so on and so forth. So currently that part of the game is working. We've coded that correctly, so that's good news. Now we can work on the next part of the game. Now the first thing that I want to do is sort this box out. It looks messy, it's just not very good looking, and I know that we just sort of set it up as for the sake of setting it up, but what we need to do is we need to make it much smaller, and I want to replace the background because this blue box around the outside of it just looks terrible. So what we need to do is come back into our code, and we're going to go to our contextual general, which is using something else. We want contextual default, and now we can see we've got our VP grid. So we're actually looking for this, and we want to change the frame properties. Size needs to be changed dramatically. Let's drop that down to, in fact we can leave that as an undefined variable for now. So if we just hashtag that out, if I can move to the right down place, press a hash there, and actually what I want to do now is put in a background as well. So we'll say background, and then I've already created a file which is going to be in UI /semi_black.png, and that should find the correct file. If I hit save there, we'll soon find out. And the reason that it hasn't worked properly is that we actually need to make some adjustments to our background command here. So what we actually need to do in here is type in frame, and then close brackets. We'll just pop that there like that. Then we need to define the size of our borders, which is 0 because I've got an empty square. And then the last thing that we need to add in is the tiling. So I'm going to say tile equals GUI, and we've already got this defined in our default variables. So we're going to say frame underscore tile, and then that should work. So if we now come back to our game file, you can see that it's updated because I had Shift R activated, and now we have a box like so. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back here and I'm actually going to reduce this like so, and let's just say let's take 250 and Shift R again, and now when we select we can see that's a much more sensible space. In fact, we could actually reduce that by maybe another 10 pixels or so. I'm going to say 243, and after a bit of trial and error the golden figure comes out at about 238. You can see it's not perfect, but it's certainly an improvement on what we had before. Now, arguably, we could make the size of our object automatic, which wouldn't be the end of the world. In fact, let's see what happens if we do that. You can see now I've changed. All I've done is I've commented out the X and Y sizes, and then as you can see, it now appears on the bottom right hand side of the screen, and it's exactly the right size to fit all the buttons in. That's fine if we want our UI to be dynamic, but what I want our UI to do is look like it's permanent, and the UI boxes themselves just to populate with the relevant buttons. Because remember, this isn't the only actions that we're going to be able to take. We're certainly going to add more interactions for each character, but also depending on where we are, we're going to add actions to be available in this box as well. So whilst having the size dynamic fixes the problem of not being 100% sure what size we need it to be, it does mean that this box is going to keep changing, growing, and all that sort of thing. And that might be what you want. It's entirely up to you how you do that. So yeah, I'm going to remove those hashes because I want my UI to be a fixed size, certainly for the time being anyway, so that when we click on something, the whole screen doesn't jiggle around and change. We just want buttons to change in our UI. Now that we've fixed that, what we need to do now is look at our location system. Currently we have a class, which is here, which has the names of our locations, nice name, opening and closing times, whether or not they're a sub-location, if they need a map icon, and if they are locked. And then further down our list, you can see if we go there, we've got our background image check like so. So what we need to do is we need to create some locations, because currently we don't have any. All we've got is a backgrounds default bg.jpg, which is fine. So in our defaults and defines, we can come in here, and as you can see, we currently have no locations defined apart from my house and kitchen, and we don't have any way to transfer between one and the other. So what we'll do is we're just going to copy this and paste it a few more times so that we have our a list of options that we can choose from. So my house being a parent, and then the kitchen being one of the rooms. We can also say bedroom, and we can say bathroom, and then we can say, I don't know, lounge or living room, whatever you call it. Living room, it all needs to be lowercase because this is the codified version. And then in our user friendly, we can say my bedroom. We can say the bathroom, or just bathroom, because we don't generally refer to it as my bathroom unless you are posh and you have an ensuite. And then we have like so. Oops, don't need that capital O there. Okay, so we have opening hours apparently from 0 till 7, and then we have the parent, which is my house, my house, my house. Then we have a map icon, then we have blah 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 blah. So we need to now create a screen that's going to allow us to change between these rooms, and we're going to keep it nice and simple to start with. I'm not going to use any posh icons or any map screens or anything like that. All we're going to have is a bar on the left hand side with a list of all of our locations, and then the ability to click to change. So what we need to do is we actually need to open up our screens, and we're going to add a new one. We're going to call this the nav screen. So we're going to create a new file. I'm going to call it nav_screen.rpy, and then we're going to go for screen, nav screen, like so. And then all we're going to do is we're going to create a frame. This frame is going to be, I think we're going to copy our background stuff from the contextual screen that we had here. We're going to say copy this, and we're going to paste it in here like so. So we're just going to hit there, and then we're actually going to say this is going to be nav screen style underscore prefix, and we're going to say nav screen. I spelled that incorrectly, so we'll change that now. We're going to say a nav screen frame, and then we can change this, or we can leave it the same. I'm actually going to remove. I'm going to change some of this. Y line, we can have that at 0, 0. No, we'll have it, actually, do you know what? We'll have it as 1, 0. We'll have X as 0, 0. Going to leave this the same because we want the same background. Padding is going to be the same as well. And then we're going to change our sizes. I think the X size needs to be more like 300 because I think it's going to be quite wide otherwise. And then we can leave that as is. So we've got a frame. We need to fill it with stuff, and we want a VBox in there. And then what we need to do is we need to loop through our locations. So first thing I'm going to do is quickly go to defaults and defines and make sure I get the name of the list correct, otherwise it's going to cause all kinds of problems. So for I in, I know we say for Q in locations. Now what we need to do is say if Q dot is open, which is another thing in our classes file, we're just going to quickly whip up to where we've defined that class, and we just make sure we get that correct because we do capitalize things randomly. If Q is open, because we don't want the name of the location to be in the list if the location is not open. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create an image button. No, actually we're just going to create a button. That's all we're going to do. And we're going to have some text. And that is going to be Q dot nice name. And again, we'll come back to our classes file and check that we've got the name of that property correct. Small n big N. Small n big N. And then we're going to have a action, which is going to be set variable location, and it's going to change it to be q.name. And let's just get that basic functionality sorted before we do anything else. So we're just going to reload our code, remembering that we actually have to go to our main UI file and actually use this screen. So we'll copy that, stick that in there. And I think I'm going to put this on top of I'm going to put it in the same place as contextual default. So we'll save that there. And as you can see, currently what we have is a whole bunch of locations there, and if we click on them, it's going to allow us to change around, and only when we're in the correct location for where Sally is will she actually appear on the screen. That's fine. One thing that we do need to do though is we need to add, because currently what we have in our code is if we select Sally and then we move rooms, she stays selected. So we need to add a function in there, or a piece of code which deselects her when we are not in that location. So that actually needs to go inside our screen for this UI. So what we'll do is we'll quickly come out of our code, and what we currently have is if character selected. So we need to add another function into here, which we're going to do at the very top, and we're going to say if NPCs open bracket selected dot, nope, don't put a dot there, we put it there, dot location is not the same, or we can just do not equal to our location, then we need to change selected equals -1, and we have to put a £sign there, save that, and then we have to test if that works. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this code, I'm going to control exit, I'm going to save that file, and I'm actually going to put this into our main game loop because it's quite an important check. So we've got the UI return called there, we'll pop this there, and then that will simply reduce that, and we just have to double check that if the location is not equal, if their location is not equal to our location. So let's just check that those properties are actually the ones we're looking for. So we'll come up to where we define our NPC, and there's a lowercase location, that's great. And then if we go to our defaults and defines, we can check that our location is also a lowercase l. So what we're saying is every time we interact with the screen, it's going to check that the person that we had selected is still in the same room as us. And if they're not, it should deselect them. And the one last thing that I think we also have to do to get this to work is to go into nav screen. And when we've set that location, we also need to return. And we can just say return, and that should hopefully not crash the game. So here we are, got it all loaded up, ready to go. So we've got our character there. We click on her, and as you can see, it brings up the buttons to interact with her. And then when we change location, it resets. And then when we come back into the room, it stays reset. So we have to select the character again, which is precisely what we need to happen. So good bit of debugging and forward thinking there, because we're kind of making things happen that we need to make happen as we go through. Because you don't want, when you first release your game, to get a whole bunch of bug reports about silly things like that. Like, I can still interact with X character when I'm not in the room with them. Things like that are the kind of things that will annoy players. Or allow them to abuse the system. For example, if they're trying to farm the stats with this character, they could theoretically keep doing that throughout the day, even though you can't be in the same location as them. So this is an important thing that we needed to check on. So well spotted for that one. The next thing we need to do is add a way of making these sub-locations and locations. So what I want to do is just means it's a little bit more organized. So we've currently got a list that runs through our locations, which is fine. But what I want to actually do is have, sublist. So we're going to say for Q in locations. And then we're going to say if Q is open, that's fine. And now what I also want to do is say if Q.name equals Q.parent, then it's going to create the big button there, like so. And then what we want to do is go through another list, and we'll just say something like for QS in locations. And then what we want to do is say another button, and we can actually just copy. To be fair, we can just copy this. All we're going to do is change the formatting like that. And we could add a tab at the beginning, or we could not. Let's just go with, let's add a little bit of space at the beginning. So what we'll do here is we're going to put hbox in there. And then we'll add tab in there, and then all we're going to do is say text, and then we're going to add 2 spaces at the beginning. Or we could add a dash like that. That would be perfectly fine, like a double dash. No, a single dash would be fine. Cool. So all we're going to do now is say for QS in locations, and we're going to say if Q.name does not equal Q.parent. In other words, if we're in a sub-location, then we're going to add that there. And we can actually change the fonts as well. What we could do is in here we can say font. I don't know if I've got any fonts installed right now. So yeah, do you know what? We'll do that later. We'll come back to that once we've got some fonts copied over. But for now, all we can do is double check that our code actually works how we want it to. Which it is not going to do currently, because if you'll notice, what I've got is I've actually embedded that loop within the button. So we actually need to tab that back one so that it is shift tab. Come on. Oh no, I have to actually get in the screen. Oh, Control Z, shift tab. Right. So now we are outside of the scope of that button. We can save that, and then we can test to see if it works. What we have to do is remember that we're going to qs.name and qs.parent. And a qs.name there, and qs.name there. And then if we remember to save that, now the code will definitely work. And as you can see, it does. It's interesting that we have to do this sort of thing, but it is part of the process. Sometimes you will find that you're just thinking on the go and coding on the go, which is kind of the whole point of this series, is that we learn to practice. Another thing that you'll notice is that there's a little bit of a space there at the bottom of the screen where her legs don't quite meet the bottom. So that's something that we need to address as well sooner rather than later, because once we have actual locations in the backgrounds, that's going to become a little bit jarring for the players. And from what I can see in our character screen code, the reason for that is that we currently don't have a padding setting. So what we actually need to do is say padding, and then we can just set that as 0,0. And then realistically, that should solve the problem. And as you can see, now I've run the code, that has indeed removed that gap from the bottom. As I say, that's more of a quality of life issue in that when people are playing it, they're going to notice that gap, and we're going to become quite annoying for them, which obviously we don't want that to happen. We want to kind of try and catch as many of these problems and fix them as soon as we possibly can, rather than waiting to the end and trying to fix all the bugs. So as we're working through this series, if you spot something that you don't like, change it. Currently the nav screen is fine. What we can do is replace it with a bar full of little icons for the locations further down the line. But as far as this currently goes, you know, a simple button is fine. You can choose to replace those with image buttons if you so choose. By the time we get to the end of this series, you'll have gotten your head around how all of this code kind of functions and understand how to create alternatives to everything that we've done. For example, you could add an icon property to each location, which you would then simply put in screen in place of the nice name or the text-friendly name. So simple little things like that. Now we can move around our locations. The background doesn't currently change because we don't have any images for the background. So what I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to find some images as placeholders for those things, and then I'll be right back. So now you can see I've got an image in the background, and because of the way that we've lit our avatar, or the way I've lit the avatar for this render, it doesn't look completely out of place. And then if we go into a different location, you can see she's not in there, but we can flick through the other locations and we've got images for them. Now I am going to replace all of these with proper renders at some point, but for now these are just images that I grabbed off Google just for demonstration purposes. And then as you can see, we click on the character and the icons appear in the menu. So we're a really good, decent way into this series now. We've got a lot of functionality. Again, feel free to change the formatting of these buttons if you want to. You can replace them with icons, entirely up to you. And then of course, don't forget to create new icons to replace these ones, because this is currently just using the default icon. And again, you can make those look however you want to. And you can change the background to the image as much as you want as well, entirely up to you. By now you should have half a clue how to do these things without me needing to show you how to do them. So in the next episode, what we need to do is we need to carry on adding UI interface elements so that we can add more functionality to our game. Thanks very much for watching that one, guys. I hope you found that useful. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. But until then, you take damn good care of yourselves, alright? Bye bye.